Hey everybody, SoxHeather here, and I have got a Tasty Tuesday for you. And boy is it going to be tasty, you don't even know. The dish that I'm about to make is not necessarily like a Weight Watcher friendly or a diet dish. It's not exactly super fatty, it's pretty healthy, it's got all fresh ingredients. I've not done the calorie counting, so I'm going to do that at the end of this just to see where we stand with it. But what I'm going to cook for you is a Persian stew. And it's called Ghormeh Sabzi. Now, Ghormeh Sabzi is like the holy grail of the Persian food. The Persians in there hooping and hollering. And the thing that you should know about Ghormeh Sabzi is everyone makes it just a little bit differently. And every Persian child will say to you, my mom makes the best Ghormeh Sabzi. And for my husband, it's true. For the Persian, his mom absolutely makes the best Ghormeh Sabzi. It's just the way it is. Some people make it, and as I go through the ingredients, I'll tell you a few of the differences that people will do. But I'm going to show you what I do. And I'm going to start by telling you the general recipe that I got was from a website that I adore called mypersiankitchen.com. She actually doesn't know that I'm going to shout her out, so I'll probably email her before I post this. So anyway, she's amazing. Her website has got like everything that a girl like me needs for marrying into a Persian family. It's helped me with Nowruz, which is Persian New Year. She's helped me with all kinds of things, and she probably doesn't even know it. I do shout out to her on Instagram a lot when I make her food, though. She's just really cool. Her recipes are great. Anyway, so that being said, this is me doing Ghormeh Sabzi. And Ghormeh Sabzi translated, I know Sabzi is herbs. What's gourmet?
No idea.
The Persian doesn't know either. So this is my interpretation of Ghormeh Sabzi. It's got part of mypersiankitchen.com's recipe, and then there are a few things that I tweaked because I know that my mother-in-law does it, and you know, happy husband, happy life. So it's my version of Ghormeh Sabzi. There are a lot more experts out there, and there are a ton of YouTube videos that do Ghormeh Sabzi. Can you tell I'm nervous to show you guys? Because I know when I put Ghormeh Sabzi and people search for Ghormeh Sabzi recipe, they're going to be like, okay, this girl doesn't know what she's doing. Actually, they're going to turn it off before they even get to the recipe because I'm yakking my brains off. Let's get to the ingredients, shall we? So first of all, we have stew beef. And you'll see this is a good beef. The Persian and I don't eat nearly as much beef as we used to. We actually stopped for quite some time. But now we're back to it because, well, Ghormeh Sabzi, that's why. I have 2 pounds here. Now, Sanam's recipe. Sanam is the one on mypersiankitchen.com. Her recipe calls for 1 pound. I'm mostly doubling this. I'm actually doing about 1.5 of her version because we're having people over for dinner tomorrow, and I know they're going to want to take some home, and the Persian is definitely going to want leftovers. So I have 2 pounds of beef stew. I've picked a good quality beef. I have actually 1.5 cups of dark red kidney beans. Now in Sanam's recipe, she calls for 1/3 cup. The Persian really likes beans in his Ghormeh Sabzi, so I'm adding extra. The other thing too is she uses dried and soaks them, which I did last time I made it. But this time I talked to my mother-in-law and she said you can just use the canned kind and rinse them really well so they're not really high in sodium. So I'm going to try that this time.
It has to be dark red.
Yes, and I was just about to say that. Now, some people will use pinto beans in their Ghormeh Sabzi. Some people will use light red kidney beans. Some people, I've actually even seen white beans in Ghormeh Sabzi.
Yeah. Black-eyed peas.
Black-eyed peas. Any kind of bean will do, whatever your favorite bean. The Persian is very specific. He wants red kidney beans, and they have to be dark red. Don't get the light red. This is the way the Persian likes them.
It's traditional.
We have 6 cups of water. Sanam's recipe calls for 4, and I'm doing 1.5 times. We have 6 teaspoons of garlic, or 6 cloves of garlic. Her recipe calls for 4. Her recipe calls for 4 of these. These are called limo omani. They're dried Persian sour limes. And what you want to do, now you have to go to a Middle Eastern store to get these. You can't just buy these anywhere. Any store that sells this brand of product, Sadaf, that's what you're looking for. They pretty much carry everything Middle Eastern or Persian or whatever. But they carry these dried limes, so you can look for those wherever you go or wherever you live. And what you want to do is you want to score them. You want to poke a couple holes in them because these are going to get soaked up in the stew and they're going to get very, very soft. And they're very torchy, which is sour. Torch, sorry. I say E because that's how we add, like, crispy. If it's crisp, if it's got a crisp, it's crispy. But this is very torch, which means sour. My mouth is watering, actually, just thinking of how sour they are. She calls for 4, and so I've got 6. We like things a little extra torch around here, so I've also got some in the ground form. I've got about 1/4 teaspoon of this in the ground form. And then I also have a teaspoon of this, which is what I just showed you. It's sour grape juice made by Sedef, and it's also called verjuice.
I don't know why.
I don't either.
It's literally sour grapes.
It's sour grapes, man. And so we've got that. We've also got 2 teaspoons of turmeric. We have 1 large and 1 small diced onion. We have olive oil. And her recipe calls for 1 onion. I did 1 and a small. Now, these 3 ingredients, when I started learning from my mother-in-law on how to cook certain things, pretty much every Persian dish starts with a base of oil, turmeric, and diced onions. That smell is fantastic, and it permeates every Persian woman's home. Now, the next ingredient are the herbs, and I'm gonna talk to you a minute about these herbs. Okay, so sabzi in Ghormeh Sabzi means herbs. It also means green, yeah? Sabz is green. Sabzi is herbs. Ghormeh Sabzi. Anyway. The herbs in Ghormeh Sabzi are the absolute most important part of any Ghormeh Sabzi. And a lot of women, or people, a lot of people, men cook too, Heather, a lot of people will do it differently. Some add leeks, some add green onions, some add parsley, just the flat leaf parsley, some add the regular parsley and flat leaf parsley. The general base is parsley, fenugreek, which is something I had never heard of until I married a Persian, and some sort of either leek or chive mixture, and cilantro. And here's what I did. I'm going to show you and I'll tell you what it is. But here's the thing about Ghormeh Sabzi. If you're going to make Ghormeh Sabzi, this is not something that you go to the store after work, buy the ingredients for, and then come home and whip it right up for your family. Ghormeh Sabzi is something that takes a lot of time. I know I showed you the ingredients. It sounds very simple. That plate of herbs that I showed you, or I'm about to show you, I don't remember if I just showed you or not, takes a lot of time. You have to get the herbs. You have to find fenugreek. Good luck with that. But if you find a place that sells that sour grape juice or those dried limes, they'll sell fenugreek, even if it's dried. Now, there are 2 ways you can do your herbs for Ghormeh Sabzi. You can do it fresh, which is what I've done. They also sell it like this. I bought this just to show you and just in case my recipe failed. But last time I made it, it didn't fail. This is strictly parsley, leeks, and fenugreek dried in a can. A lot of places will also sell it in a big bag of dried herbs. And then they have a recipe on the side for Ghormeh Sabzi, which includes like onions and the sour lemons and lemon juice and turmeric. So, oh, but they say you can replace mushrooms for the meat. If you're vegetarian, you can do mushrooms. The Persian's mom does it with potatoes, because his brother's vegetarian. So, he's nauseous. He hates Ghormeh Sabzi with potatoes. Anyway, you could do it this way. This is not how I choose to do it, but a lot of people do, and it's fine. It's perfectly fine. So the other thing that you can do is you can get the herbs, you bring them home, you clean them, you chop them. Your food processor is going to be your absolute best friend, but you have to be careful when you do it. The herbs should be dry when you chop them because then they'll get a bit mushy and you don't want that. So let me talk to you about these herbs. Okay, another thing about these herbs. What I did is I bought a whole buttload of herbs. I brought them home, I cleaned them, and I chopped them, and then I separated it into 3 batches so that I could have all the herbs that I needed for 3 sets of Ghormeh Sabzi. I used one that night, and then I froze the other 2 in separate bags so that I would have exactly what I needed for a batch of Ghormeh Sabzi. Beyond all the prep work that you have to do with the herbs, this stew takes a long time to cook. You're cooking it low and long. I feel like you could probably do it in a slow cooker, but I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna do it on stove because that's a recipe that I follow, and I've never seen anyone do it in a slow cooker yet. If you know someone who's done Ghormeh Sabzi in a slow cooker, let a sister know, because I think that would be a nice way to do it. Maybe I'll experiment next time. Not this time. Okay, let's move on. Remember, this is a third of the herbs that I've done. So my whole batch, I did 3 cups of chopped spinach. I did 2 full huge leeks. I did 3 cups of chopped cilantro. Not straight, this is all chopped. 1 cup of chopped chives. 3 cups of chopped regular parsley. 4 cups of chopped fenugreek. 4 cups of Italian flat parsley, all of it chopped, and then I divided it into 3 batches.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this is a third of that, and I'll put that below the recipe, or below the link for Sanam's recipe, because mine was a little bit different than hers, based on my mother-in-law's recipe. So I'm going to use this. We're going to get started. The first thing we're going to do, what does every Persian recipe start with? Oil, turmeric, and dried onions. We're going to put that in a pan, and once that sautés up, we're going to add the beef, and we'll go from there. Okay, I forgot to tell you to add the garlic too. So I've just put enough oil in here to coat the bottom of the pan. I've added the onions, the garlic, and the turmeric. I'm going to let that sauté up nicely until the onions are translucent and soft. Then I'm going to add the beef. Now I'm using one of these big casserole pans with a lid. If you've got one bigger than this is about how big probably use one that's bigger than this, because I've done the recipe like 1.5 times what I should. So it'll cook down nicely. This one will work fine, but I wish I had one that was a bit wider and bigger than this one. But they're pricey, so I'm working with what I've got. Okay, while we're cooking up our onions and while we add our meat and stuff like that, while this is cooking, I'm just gonna stop stirring that. Leave it be. I put all of my herbs in a pan with a little bit of olive oil. I want to cook off all that moisture. It's kind of like toasting the herbs a bit. You want to cook it just long enough to where you start to smell them cook, and you want it to be dry. My herbs are a bit damp because I froze them, so any water that was in them was there. So when they thawed out, the herbs are a bit damp, and I just want to dry those out and get them just a tiny bit, I don't want to say crispy, but I want them dry. So I just put a tiny bit of oil in the pan. You could even just spray it with a bit of Pam, and I'm going to cook that water off while everything else is going, so that when I add these herbs, they're ready, they're fragrant, and they're just a tiny bit cooked, so they'll do well in the stew. Okay, my onions fried up nicely. I've added the beef. I'm just going to let that sit until all of the pieces are browned on one side. Then I'm going to turn them. You just want to cook it until the beef is browned. You want to give it a good little sear. That's why I wish I had a bigger pot than this, because more space, less crowding, nicer sear on your meat, but it's going to be fine. My sabzi, my herbs, are drying up nicely. You can see the steam escaping them from the water cooking off. So they're starting to smell good. I turn the heat down. You don't want to burn these. You just want to dry them and give them a nice little roasted flavor. So let all this stuff do its, sorry for the banging. I'm going to let all this stuff do its thing, and we'll get back to you at the next step. Okay, the meat is mostly browned. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my red kidney beans, dark red if you please. I'm going to add those. I'm going to add my dried limes. I know this looks weird. It's all going to be green when it's done. Looks a bit yellow. I'm adding the dried limes and the powdered dried limes. Come out of the bowl. And I'm going to add my 6 cups of water. And I'm going to stir that. I'm going to put a lid on it. And it's going to cook for an hour on medium heat. Now don't worry about these floating. They've got holes in them, so they will absorb the water eventually as they cook, and they will sink, and they'll get nice and soft, and they'll flavor this stew like you won't even believe. So I'm going to stir that up, put a lid on it, medium heat for an hour, and then we'll add those cooked herbs. Now, if you haven't gotten to the herbs yet, this is the time to do it, or not chopping them, but cooking them. You could do it now while you're waiting. I did mine ahead of time, and we'll see you in an hour. Okay, so this Ghormeh Sabzi has been cooking for about an hour. I've uncovered it, I reduced the heat, and now I'm just going to add these herbs that I've sauteed. I'm going to stir that up, I'm going to cover it, and it's going to cook for 2 to 2.5 hours. Nice and long and low. You can see it's already getting green. I'm going to stir it in. I'm going to add this is where I add my little sour grape juice, just a little bit, because I already have those limes in there. So we don't want it to be too tart, but we want the flavor. You can see the limes are starting to sink. They're getting soft. I'm just going to put that lid back on it and cook it for 2 to 2.5 hours. And then it'll be done. Here's our Ghormeh Sabzi, and oh my gosh, it smells so amazing. The herbs are all fragrant, the limes you can smell. You can see it's cooked down from about here, so this gets thicker as it goes. The beef, my mouth's watering. Everything looks really good. It smells amazing. So this has about another hour to go, and then it'll be nice and done, and then you're just going to serve that over rice. It's not going to look any different when it's finished, so I'm going to end it here. It's going to cook for another hour. I'm actually going to let it cool, then I'm going to stick it in the fridge overnight, and I'll serve it over rice after I heat it back up. And that's Ghormeh Sabzi.